What's up, everybody, and welcome to PPR Podcast number 65. As always, I'm Chase Izidoro, and I'm joined by Brandon Stone himself. And normally we start off with last week's Game of the Week recap, but with this week, with such a big game on the line,
we're too hyped.
Yeah, we got to look already forward to this Game of the Week coming up. Cathedral against Lincoln. We kind of looked at the first game of the year of Cathedral Mater Dei and thought that might be the game of the year, let alone game of the week. I think now that things have transpired, this has got to be the game of the year, at least to this point.
And we don't know what the playoffs will bring. We don't know if we'll see these two teams again. This could be step one of two.
Yeah.
But whether it is or it is not, it is still a major matchup. And two teams that have had two different paths to get here, but have still maintained. You and I have discussed on this very, very program that right now I think Cathedral is still one in the question of 1 versus 2, even though Lincoln has done about everything one can do to claim the number 1 spot. But we're going to be very clear on who the number 1 team in the county is after this. No disrespect to Carlsbad, none to Madison, none to Poway.
This is the decider this week, at least for right now.
Yeah. And strangely, it may not even be an open matchup because there's no guarantee, no matter what happens in this game, that either team ends up
exactly
in the open relay.
Exactly. I mean, with the way the system's working out, this could be it for this matchup. What happens when an unstoppable force in Roderick Robinson meets an immovable object in this Cathedral defense? Because I don't know who's going to break, and we've seen plenty of times where the high-powered offense doesn't live up to the same standards once they meet that top defense. We've seen that from a couple teams this year. How do you think that side of the ball will play out?
I think the key to this entire game is looking at the Lincoln offensive line and how they operate. You know, a lot of people talk about Roddy, and they should, an incredible guy, right? But what they forget is this is an accomplished line he's running behind.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when you have dynamic running backs like this, it attracts really good linemen because coaches and influencers can say, you know, if you lean towards Lincoln, if you either go there or you stick around there, you're going to be playing behind a guy, you're going to be playing with a guy that's going to make you look like gold, and your job is going to be opening the space for him. They did an incredible job that all year. He's been running through some incredible lanes.
Yeah.
We had Charles Hines we talked about, but don't forget about a guy like Eugene Rice. He's huge. It's a younger line, but it's still a strong line. Guys like Hardiman's in there, Logan, I think, the right tackle. There's a lot of heft there, and it's going to have to work against a Cathedral front, whether you want to call it a front 6, front 7, depending on how they align those linebackers, where they move them. That's going to be the test. And if they can establish that run and keep it moving, then Cathedral's going to have some trouble. But conversely, if there's one thing that Cathedral does right all the time, and you would know this with your past, if there's one thing that Cathedral does right all the time, it's identify and understand their running lanes.
Yeah.
And they protect them so well. Ferramo's good at that. Victory Johnson's good at that, but there are other guys who need to be good at that. Luke Westfall playing on the line, he needs to be good at that. Preston Morris has been doing a good job lately. He needs to be good at that. When you compare their tape, and when they both played Steel Canyon in back-to-back or 2 times in 3 weeks, whatever it was, both these things I'm talking about, you saw them against Steel, which, you know, they went through a tough run, gosh darn it, God bless them, that they have to be used as the example in this. But you saw it on both sides, where if each of those teams does what they're supposed to do, then it makes it so we're going to have an incredible fourth quarter. That's to me where it starts.
I agree, and I think that is the big spectacle, is the Lincoln offense versus Cathedral defense. Where I think the game is won is on the opposite side of the ball for both these teams, because the Cathedral offense has started to show signs of life. They are scoring more points now, and this Lincoln defense, we know they're top tier. But it's a different matchup in terms of how they played against Mater Dei. Cathedral might not throw the ball anywhere near the amount of times Mater Dei did. So now it's about attacking their running game. And Cathedral need to stop those drives. If Cathedral can't sustain drives and they constantly have to punt the ball back to Roderick Robinson, that is going to be the problem. But if Cathedral can sustain drives, and even if they just come away with points, 3 points on every drive, or you come away with the 7, if you get points every single time you got to give the ball back to Roderick, you are in that game. Absolutely. But if they don't, and that Lincoln defense shows up like they did, and that Cathedral defense has to keep going out there time and time again against Roderick, it's not going to be good for the Dons.
Well, let's look back with what you're talking about. Let's look back to the Mater Dei game. How did Cathedral get the job done? They won the time of possession, especially in the first half. So if they can do that again, they're already on the right track. And the other thing I want to talk about while we're sitting here is there are going to be people out here who are going to watch this game and say, this is Lincoln's greatest opportunity to put one on mighty Cathedral. Do I need to remind these people? They forget about the pre-pandemic era. Y'all realize that Lincoln won this game in 2019, right?
Yeah.
Do you realize that? And here's how they won that game. With a team that had, quote unquote, less talent than this 2022 team. Here's how they won the game. They controlled the line of scrimmage with a really nice and actually, frankly, oversized offensive line. They used that to establish some run, then took a really good quarterback in Jensen and got the ball out to outside targets, including a guy who plays at Miami now, and then played consistent on defense. They got up 21-3 in that game and then finished it out towards the end. Lincoln could run that same strategy back and run it back with better players than they did in 2019. So it's not a miracle here. Everyone's saying, oh, it's a miracle if they, oh my goodness. No, it's not. They've done it.
Yeah. And I've been coming into this saying I think Lincoln has been the more well-rounded team until we see Cathedral's offense start get going. And I'm not even sure Cathedral's at that point where, like going into this, I probably still have Lincoln as number one. But I don't think it'll be a shock for either side if they come out with victorious in this one. I really don't. Like if Cathedral wins, it's going to be like, oh, Cathedral's still Cathedral. Yeah. If Lincoln wins, it's like, well, now they're number one. You know, I don't think it's like a major jump for either. Do you happen to have a pick in this one, or who you think might come out on top?
Have you met me before? Like I'm going to go on here and pick in front of God and man and get yelled at.
I tried, folks.
In front of everybody. No, I don't have a pick, but I'd say this game will go whatever way the Lincoln offensive line goes. If the Lincoln offensive line goes great, then it's going to be a great day to be a Hornet. If the Lincoln line goes bad, then it's probably going to be a rolling dawn type of day. Yeah. That's where my eyes are on.
Yeah,
I'm excited to watch the whole darn thing, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm stoked for this one because it's been the build-up leading up to it has been phenomenal. For me, I think Lincoln might come out on top. I think they have what it takes to come out on top if they play their game right and they can keep that Don's defense on the field. The opportunities and the odds of them stopping Roderick is going to be too much for them. That said, if you think I'm picking against my boys, you are surely wrong. Roll Dons.
I want to see. Oh, also, I wonder how neutral field is going to affect this too.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. I presume Cathedral gets the Mira Mesa's home side and Lincoln gets Mira Mesa's away side. But I'm wondering how the idea of a travel game is going to affect it because it's going to have a playoff feel already. And then it has even more of a playoff feel, like championship feel on a neutral ground.
Exactly.
So I'm wondering how that's going to affect both teams too.
I think it kind of just throws them into the frying pan of like nobody has advantages on either side really. It's, you know, we're just playing ball. There is no, we got to deal with their home crowd or whatever. Yeah. You know, everyone's traveling. Everyone's at a spot they're not used to.
You know, I will say this, though. I'm not trying to draw anybody's ire, but there's a good base of Cathedral's team over the years that has come from the Mira Mesa area. Yeah. So I think you're going to have a lot of their families in the stands. You're going to see alumni that maybe are Mira Mesa and Cathedral alumni.
Yeah, but you can say the same thing.
I still remember when we knocked on Lucky Sutton's door at 6 in the morning and practically scared his family half to death. We weren't knocking on the door in Escondido. Yeah. You know, it was down the street. So that could have an effect too.
I think both sides will travel well though, for like family, friends. Because if you're a Lincoln supporter and you're not making your way out there, what are you doing this Friday night? And same thing with Cathedral. This is the game for this season. So, I mean, do you want to talk about one of the other big matchups we saw from this last week? The game you were at, Madison taking down Granite Hills 15-12. What was kind of your takeaway there? Because when I was following along on Twitter to see their score, I was kind of surprised that Granite Hill, like Madison, was at a shutout almost. You know. So, what was kind of your big takeaway from that game?
Well, there were two things before that. One, I remember the previous Friday, Allison Edmonds walked in the room and she's like, she come back from the East County game of the week, and she goes, "You better watch out for that Granite team."
Yeah.
And then I started talking to a Granite coach, and he says, "Y'all don't know. You don't know. They run the fastest. You think Lincoln, modern day, fast offense. Saints, fast offense. Granite Hills runs the fastest offense in our county. When you talk about a blur offense, it is a blur. They're getting plays off in 9 seconds. And they're moving the ball, and they've got this really interesting system that they run. Nico Tomasello, SDSU baseball commit, could really throw the ball. He can throw a frozen rope. But then they switch him out with Parlin Sanders. And then they've got a great running game. And it helps them so that way Joaquin Thomas stays fresh and plays really good on defense. They got guys like Demarion White. He was 31 on the Granite side.
Balled out.
Incredible guy. Guy had, I think, 3 sacks. I might be undercounting him. A couple tackles for loss. They had other great attackers. And they had an incredible offensive line that was disciplined and created holes and allowed that Blur offense to move. The problem is it didn't score points.
Yeah.
It did a really good job of confusing the heck out of Madison and putting their linebackers in different situations. But they weren't scoring points. They were advancing down the field, but they only ended up with 6 points. Could have been 9, but one of those field goals gets missed, right? So then you're walking into the fourth quarter, it's 6-0. You get the touchdown finally. They break in and get the touchdown. It's 12-0. You don't get the extra, the 2-point conversion. You leave the door open. And Madison's got a coaching staff that knows how to adjust in the third and the fourth quarter. In that third quarter, they weren't getting blown back. They started with a pick by the Samoan Punisher.
Yeah.
And even though they don't score on it, it shows we figured out your offensive system. We're going to get to work. And they had 2 interceptions and I think 3 turnovers if you count a turnover on down, so maybe it was 4. But the fact that they don't get they don't score outside of that touchdown again, they come back on 2 straight drives, Madison does, and scores. I learned 2 things in this game. Granite Hills almost seems like they're destined to go to a championship final.
Yeah.
And the second thing I learned is that Madison, even when the talent doesn't seem like it's there or there's something lost, they have this.
Yeah, the heart, especially on defense, man.
Or, excuse me, for the 17-year-olds, they have that dog in them. So, I don't care if they're down 26-0 in the fourth quarter. Don't count those folks out. Makes me really look forward to some of these Western League games.
They really seem unfazed, especially on the defensive side. And, they've been playing with leads probably, so it's not the biggest test. But in this, they didn't seem like they were going down, without a fight. Always on defense, they always seem to make the big play. And I think they're slowly becoming one of the best teams in this county because of that defense. And, we saw it with the huge 4th down stop. We saw it with Toilolo's interception. This defense is for real, and then you talk about the guys they have on offense to go with it. I mean, Madison's really is building themselves up to where this Western League is going to be really a dogfight.
It really is, and we should see how many of them make the open division Final Four.
I have no idea at this point.
And how all the strength of schedule, all the points work out in the end. I don't know how it's all going to work out.
And there's so many wins and losses to go into it as well because most of them are going to play each other. I mean, it's going to be great. But that was really one I was looking forward to seeing, and I really, I kind of like upsets at times. So there was a moment where I saw Granite Hills was up. I was like, oh, wow, huh? Like, I want to see this go down. And then it was like 15-12 Madison. I was like, oh, that's even better, for them to pull a comeback like that. So just an impressive all around. I can't wait to see more from both those teams.
I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think it's a good year for the city right now.
Yeah.
All the leagues around. Western League is competitive. Eastern's fun. City's fun. Central fun. It's going to be a lot of fun for everyone.
Yeah, definitely.
Lots of rhymes.
Do you want to move on to the Game of the Week recap at all?
I don't really. I'll say this. RBV should not hold their heads in shame. They should hang them at medium space. That was the toughest thing they had to face. And we haven't really gotten a really good look at Mount Carmel until right now. And the best players played the best where they needed to play the best and showed why they're at the level they're at in the division they're at. No shame for RBV. Bell can play. I was told by a lot of people, look out for Josh Bell. And I understand why I was told that. And I also learned how to say Drew Ventimiglia.
Yeah, right.
That was nice.
I think we've all butchered that about 100 times.
And I said this. I don't know. I said it to somebody. I don't know if it was on tape. I said, Drew's going to be good in this game because he's on the road. So he doesn't have to play in the band.
Yeah.
So he can rest during halftime. He's not hitting the tuba, the sax, whatever it is. He got some time to rest. So now he comes out, and when did he make his big impact? In the second half.
Yeah.
Because he had time to get some water. Man wasn't screwing around, going, boop, 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 boop. No. You got to hang out. Him and Bell got together, and bam. That's that.
So they're on to something now. More road games, get the ball to Ventimiglia.
More road games. They should try to lose the last couple of games of the season so they can just be on the road.
Just be on the road. No
and
band.
they don't have to worry about it. He's good to go.
It's one way of looking at
Put
it.
in a strategy. Put that in the room, Coach F. Put that in the room. Nah, I'm kidding. Go solve your life. I'm going to go work now.
All right. Well, that's been Brandon Stone, everybody.
Hey, I have to go back to my home country now. Bye.
Well, with that, I'll add on for the game of the week, as I'm now flying solo on this podcast. Mount Carmel 38, RBV 7. Josh Bell, when I first saw him on 7-on-7 at the LCC camp, I was really impressed because last year, with Caden Gent, he was a good quarterback, but he seemed more of like an athletic type of quarterback, where Bell is that pocket passer, and his presence and his poise looked so good, and he was phenomenal in the pocket, and I think that's really helped them. And, maybe I underrated Mount Carmel coming into this season. I didn't think their team was all Jaden Virgin, but he was a big impact of their team. And so really with him going, I was like, all right, let's see what we have with them. And they didn't get off to the hottest start, but man, that defense is alive and well, even without Jaden Virgin there anymore. To hold that RBV team, and sure, RBV's not played the greatest teams out there yet, but they put up 50 points a game. To hold them to one touchdown, even with Trapasso still rushing for over 100 yards, to hold them just to one touchdown with Underhill as well, that's impressive. And it seems like one of those arrival games that we've seen so much of. And I think this is one of them for Mount Carmel. 5 sacks, 14 tackles for a loss, 2 interceptions on the defensive side. Vincent Miglia, Axel Enriquez also had great games. Connor Bonanno, 94 yards, 2 touchdowns. This Mount Carmel team is really making a stir for the Palomar League. And I think now it's becoming, Del Norte got off to a hot start, sure. But now we're looking at Poway, Del Norte, and Mount Carmel. And, last year when they all started playing league play, it really became chaos because they were all beating each other. Nobody pushed themselves out in front. I want to see how they match up against each other, especially really Poway and Mount Carmel. They're really the top 2 dogs in that league as for right now. So now we move on to the El Cajon Ford East County game of the week. Helix 38, Servite 31. This Helix team we always look at is Rylan Jesse, Quincy Heron, but really the running game exploded. Jason Cisneros, 108 yards, 2 touchdowns. Kevin Allen III, 227 yards and 3 touchdowns. 35 unanswered points for Helix. This is just really an incredible offensive performance, especially against Servite. And, it's not the Servite of old, but it's still Servite. And to put up that type of performance against them, I think Helix, I was a little concerned with the game against St. Augustine, but they still won. But Helix really came onto the scene on this one where it's like, okay, they're back, they're rolling, everything's fine. And I think also on the same, we talked about Madison earlier, it's kind of the same thing on their defensive side. They are one of the top defensive teams in this county. And if you can't stop that offense with their rushing game with Cisneros and Allen and their passing game with Jesse and Heron and Parker, then you're going to also struggle on the defensive side as well against them. They are proving to be one of the top teams. I don't know if they make the Open because of their schedule and they lost to Cathedral. We'll have to see down the line. We have to see how the Western League shakes out. But as of right now, this Helix team deserves to be in the conversation as one of the best teams. They probably won't be the number 1 because that'll probably be decided against Lincoln and Cathedral this week. But Helix still rolling along. And then we go to another impressive performance, Carlsbad in the North County game of the week, beating Liberty 27 to Goose Egg 0. That's what I wanted to see out of Carlsbad. It was a great defensive performance. But we also have to talk about the arrival of Zach Marshall. When I saw him at the McCossie camp, he was incredible. And I'd seen him at Santa Fe Christian from the highlights, but I hadn't seen him in person. And what he was doing to some of the best defensive players in this county, he blew me away. He was by far and away the best offensive weapon at that camp. And he's showing it again. And now you put him with Sayin. And to talk about it, he threw for a touchdown as well to Justin Johnson, who had a great game, 6 catches, 170 yards, 2 touchdowns. This Carlsbad offense, I think now you have to elevate them with the addition of Zach Marshall. They've become so much more deadlier. And now the defensive side of the ball going to shutout against a good Liberty team from Bakersfield. It's really impressive. And, we talk about there's more avocado games to come, and they're going to have great matchups going down the stretch run. Carlsbad seems to have a new breath of fresh air with Zach Marshall added to this lineup. And then we go some couple quick recaps here. Patrick Henry in a shootout against Morse, 45-36. We know Morse is a high-powered offense, and they still balled out. Mosty, Alante Logan, Demarion Wright, they all still had their numbers. They all still ate. But Patrick Henry showing up to the party as well. Malachi Gitman, I loved him as a quarterback. I loved him last year with Lux and Omar Hammond. obviously when you lose those two weapons, it's probably going to be a little bit tougher for you. But he comes out there and throws for 5 passing touchdowns, 314 yards. Can Patrick Henry get back to what they were last year? I don't know. It's a little bit different of a team here. It's not too far different, but a little bit different with the new coach. And so them getting a slow start wasn't the biggest red flag for me, but that's a big sign of life that they put up. They were able to stay in that game against Morse. Kind of what we saw against RBV as well, where, it really was going to be a shootout of who can outscore each other. So, big ups to Patrick Henry for beating a very good Morse team. And also, I got to talk about the Dogs from the Peninsula. Point Loma, 49-0 in a rivalry game against La Jolla. A very good La Jolla team, a very good La Jolla offense. They shut them out and beat them by 7 touchdowns. And we have to talk about the guy with the greatest neck roll this side of the Mississippi, and that's Chase Lowry. 3 touchdowns, one of them being a pick 6, but he rushed for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's the thing. It's not just he's a great two-way player. He's rushing for over 100 yards and getting 2 touchdowns. He's not just that bruiser running back who's just going to pile his way into the end zone. He's getting the yards to go with it, and he's incredible on the defensive side of the ball. For me, he's probably on my Silver Pigskin podium at this point. At the very least, he's in the fan vote. If he continues like this, and especially with the way Point Loma has been playing, I could see them going for a CIF title this year, or at least being in the championship game. I think that's without a doubt. This Point Loma team, I say it again, they are very good and they are very real. To do that to a good La Jolla game, and it's a rivalry game as well. To do that to them, just flat out impressive to that entire team. But had to shout out Chase Lowry again, man. The Lumberjack is for real. And then another big game. I love these big shootouts. 49-46, UC beating Bishops. Samuel Tote Harris, 8 for 105. LaDainian Lawrence, 2 rushing touchdowns. And I believe he had a pick 6 where they tossed it up in the end zone as well. And to kind of piggyback off the Point Loma discussion, the City League, we've talked about it so much. Point Loma, Mission Bay, Morse, UC. All very good teams. All teams are capable of putting up a lot of points, but also having some pretty good defenses as well. I don't know who's coming out on top. I probably have to say Point Loma at this moment, at least as far as rankings go. But as of right now, I think any of them could beat each other. They all have the capabilities of doing that. And for that UC team, it's been a little bit of a struggle at the beginning, but they're still for real. They still have all the talent in the world, and they still have a very good player in Samuel Cooper IV. I think they can go back to the CIF title again. I wouldn't be surprised if, we get the game where they play against Point Loma for the City League will be a phenomenal one. I have no doubts about that. As far as right now, I guess we could start looking at who my top 10 is. For me, I still have kind of groupings. 1 and 2, Lincoln and Cathedral. As of right now, I'll stick with Lincoln as number 1. I've had them there for the last 2 weeks. Cathedral at number 2. 3, 4, and 5, really, you can shift them all around. Carlsbad, Madison, Helix. As for right now, I think I was more impressed with the Carlsbad win over the Helix win. No disrespect to Helix. And, Madison being a Granite Hills team. It's hard to, shift them. So I guess I'll go Carlsbad 3, Helix 4, Madison 5. But I've had Madison 3, Carlsbad 5. That is a rotating door and revolving door as of this moment until we see them start to break away from one another. And, we'll see these teams go against Lincoln and teams like Mission Hills down the line as well. So there's going to be more to see from those teams. 6, I got Poway after the 2 back-to-back buys. 7, I have Mira Mesa, who they have been phenomenal this season, and I can't say that enough. I love Tyson Line. I love Makai Thompson. They also have a bunch of other really good players as well. That Mira Mesa team is also for real, kind of flying under the radar like Point Loma a bit, where they don't probably get the respect they deserve. Then I have LCC at number 9, Mater Dei getting back in the top 10 at number 10 after an impressive win to show that they are still who they are in beating a St. Augustine team and really beating them down. That Mater Dei team, they're gonna have a bit of a lighter schedule going down the stretch run here, so we're probably gonna see a lot more of these score lines. But they are still a top 10 team in this county, and on the outside looking in, I feel wrong dropping Granite Hills outside of the top 10, especially with a great performance against Madison. But they're right there. You could shift them around really with any of those teams. El Camino, Mission Hills, and Mount Carmel, I think, are right on the outside looking in as well. They keep putting in these performances, and they're going to be able to go against these tough teams coming up. So we're going to find out a lot more about them with how good they are, and if they can sneak a win against, Mount Carmel, against a Poway, stuff like that. So that's my top 10 as of right now. It's still so undecided because there's still so much we need to see from these teams. And then finally, we're going to preview the games of the week for next week. We already did game of the week with Lincoln and Cathedral. Now we're looking at the Jersey Mike City game of the week, which Brandon will actually be at. 4-1 Mira Mesa at 5-0 Madison. We talked about last week about Granite Hills, this being their arrival game for how they're going to test up against a good Madison team. Somewhat similar for Mira Mesa as well. I think Mira Mesa might just have a little bit better star talent with Tyson Line and Makai Thompson than Granite Hills, but I think Granite Hills might be a more well-rounded team. I don't know. It's kind of tough to decide with those two, but Madison is going to have another tough test, and really for Mira Mesa, they're going to have a tough test because they run off that offense. That offense is the heart of that team, really, and we've seen the Madison defense and just how strong and how stout they are. Can Mira Mesa put Madison in that same situation they were in with Granite Hills, where they're in the game and keep themselves in the game? Maybe. I'd probably still favor Madison in this one, but I wouldn't be surprised if Mira Mesa gives a run for their money. We got to look at a similar situation that Mira Mesa had in week one. Sure, it's week one of the season. Team is a lot different than it is right now. But in week one, they got beat pretty bad by Helix. Maybe they've learned a lot since then, but at the same time, can they show that they're up to that level to play one of the top teams in this county against Madison this week? That'd be a great one to watch as well. Then we go to the North County game of the week, another great avocado matchup. 3-2 LCC at 3-2 El Camino. With LCC having gotten their first 2 avocado wins, this is another huge moment for them because El Camino is by no means a pushover. They took a very good Carlsbad team basically down to the wire, and they're going to have another tough test of getting past them, especially because El Camino is so strong in the front seven and so strong defensively. This going to be a really tough test for LCC. I know they're coming off a bye, but I think LCC probably has a bit of the advantage, especially because they still have that momentum from their 2 big wins as well. The Avocado League, it's going to be interesting how it shakes out. But LCC, this is probably a bigger game for them because of their 2 wins. And can they put themselves in a position where they can go against Carlsbad to win the Avocado League this year? That's really what's coming down for this week. And then National City Miles Carr game of the week, South Bay game of the week, 2-3 Bonita Vista at 1-4 Mar Vista. Really, when we ever talk about Bonita Vista, it starts and stops with Dante Scott, the phenomenal CSU commit, Colorado State. He's a great player. Mar Vista, it's going to be very, very tough for them. They haven't really got off to a very good start this season. They got a win against Claremont, so maybe there's a little bit of momentum there or something's starting to come together. But really, I would be surprised if they pull off the upset against Bonita Vista, especially because Bonita Vista is coming off a very good game against Vincent Memorial. So I would expect Bonita to go out there and win this game, but you never know. Maybe Mar Vista, they take that and they're saying, hey, we can play up to against these teams and we can go get another win. But I'm probably leaning a little bit more towards Bonita in this one. And then the El Cajon Ford East County game of the week, 3-2 El Cap at 2-4 Santana. The people for El Cap I'm watching are their captains, running back Angel Diaz and linebacker Dominic Denha. They really are a very key role on both sides of the ball for this team. El Cap's probably not off to the best start compared to last season. But it's hard to do that when you lose Savion Yokley. But they still are a very good team. In Santana, we saw them get off to a very slow start, but now it's starting to come together a little bit. They picked up 2 wins here. This is going to be a very good East County matchup where I think the teams are more or less even with each other, probably favoring El Cap just a little bit here. But for the most part, I think it's still going to be a very good game, especially because I think Santana has a little bit of momentum here. But it's really all just panning out to be a great run down the stretch one as far as league games go. I know we still got a couple more games this week before we start really getting into all of that, but so many implications on the line, especially when it comes, to the Lincoln Cathedral game. We're going to find out who the top dog is. But as for right now, man, I can't wait. It's going to be so good to see these decisive moments. Lincoln Cathedral, Madison Mira Mesa, where these teams finally, put their stamp down and say, we are a very good team for both sides. It could be Mira Mesa upsetting Madison. It could be, Cathedral finally saying, hey, we still are the top dogs and nobody in San Diego County is going to beat us. It's going to be such a great week. I cannot wait for Friday night as always. But until then, guys, we'll see you in the next one.